Hello there, welcome to NTV English News Bulletin. I'm Bhawana Casey. In the beginning, we have the headlines. Poll campaigns intensify with just 2 days remaining for canvassing. 300,000 personnel to be deployed for security of polling centers. G20 summit opens in Bali with a plea for unity as Ukraine war tops agenda. Biden reiterates U.S. support for one China policy following his meeting with Xi. UN projects world's population to reach 8 billion. India to replace China as the world's most populous country next year. And Djokovic negotiating with Australian officials over his participation in the 2023 Australian Open. 21-time champion, Grand Slam champion, now chasing 6th title at ATP Masters. Welcome back. Now we have the news in details. Poll campaigns have intensified all across the country with election dates approaching. It's just 2 days remaining that the political parties and independent candidates are allowed to hold public campaigns to garner voters' support. The twin elections to the lower house of the federal parliament and the assemblies of all 7 provinces are being held in a single phase on November the 20th, which is just 5 days away. Meanwhile, security arrangement is in place to hold the elections in free, fair and peaceful atmosphere across the country. The police spokesperson informed that surveillance has been increased on groups that can influence to operate aberrant activities and on those groups boycotting the election. Meanwhile, 31 different groups have announced that they will boycott the House of Representatives and provincial assembly elections. The police so far has arrested 115 persons from different groups provoking to carry out violent activities to disrupt the elections. The central spokesperson of Nepal Police, Tek Prasad Rai, informed explosives and ammunition were found with those 11 people and a registration of case has been filed against them. Spokesperson Rai informed 7 people have been arrested from Tanu and 4 from Bagmati province's districts. The police head office has issued a circular to police units across the country to promptly control activities that create misinformation about the election and affect the peace and security of the election. Around 300,000 police personnel have been mobilized for the security of the polling centers across the country. With few days remaining for the November 20 general elections, the social networking sites, especially Facebook, is flooded with election-related adverts of the candidates. Most of the candidates have utilized information technology by making their publicity through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and other social networking platforms. Publicity on the social platform seems inevitable, but it has connections to economic dimensions while looking at election-related activities. According to Meta Ads Library report released by the Meta, the mother company of Facebook, a total of 5,560 Facebook pages and profiles have been used for election advertisement boost in the past 1 month. As shared by Meta details, $67,036 have been spent till Monday for the online ads of election-related contents. The Nepal Rashtra Bank has stated that the country's foreign exchange reserve has reduced, alarming the economic indicators in this area. Women have been assigned the responsibility of polling officer in 8 polling stations of Magdi. The Chief Returning Officer has informed that the 8 polling stations in Magdi will be held in charge of women in the House of Representatives and Provincial Assembly elections being held. Out of the 120 polling stations in Magdi, 8 polling stations have appointed women polling officers. Assistant Election Officer Tej Prasad Paudel said polling stations have been made inclusive and women have been given the leadership in the polling stations. Female employees have been given the responsibility of 3 polling stations in Beni municipality of Magdi and 5 polling stations in the rural municipality of the district. With this update, time to go for a short break, but still to come we have. Welcome back now to more updates. The COVID-19 hit tourism sector of the country is gradually coming back to life from the early months of 2022. According to Nepal Tourism Board, the arrival of foreign tourists has increased by 72% in October as compared to the same period the previous year. In October alone, 88,582 tourists traveled Nepal from different countries, while at the same period last year, the number was just around 23,000. From January to October 2022, a total of 473,500 tourists have entered Nepal. The Tourism Board says influx of tourists has increased mainly due to efforts made to boost the tourism sector. Now to the international updates. Indonesia's President Joko Widodo opened the G20 summit in Bali on Tuesday by saying there was no other option but to end Russia's war with Ukraine. Discord over Russia's war on Ukraine and festering tensions between the US and China are proving to the ominous backdrops for the world leaders gathering in Indonesia for a summit of the group of 20 biggest economies. Earlier, French President Emmanuel Macron held a bilateral meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping on the sidelines of the G20 summit. Macron said he expressed France's willingness to give new impulse to cooperation between France and China to resolve great international challenges, including climate change, the war in Ukraine, and economic stability. On Monday, US President Joe Biden says he was not looking for conflict between the US and China, and there will be no new Cold War following his meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping. Biden reiterated US support for its long-standing One China policy, which recognizes the government in Beijing while allowing for informal American relations and defense ties with Taipei, and strategic ambiguity over whether the US would respond militarily if the island were attacked. The United Nations estimates that the world's population will reach 8 billion and that India will replace China as the world's most populous nation next year. The UN report on World Population Prospects 2020-22 that was released on Tuesday also says that the global population growth fell below 1% in 2020 for the first time since 1950. More than half of the projected increase in global population up to 2050 will be concentrated in just 8 countries of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Egypt, Ethiopia, India, Nigeria, Pakistan, the Philippines, and Tanzania. The report projects that next year, India, with a current population of 1.412 billion, will surpass China with a current population of 1.426 billion. Two more updates, but before that, time to go for a short break. Welcome back. Now to more updates. Australia's most populous state of New South Wales is still facing major flood events on Tuesday. Local media reported that the town of Forbes issued an emergency evacuation order because the Lachlan River is rising faster than expected by local authorities. Forbes already faced an evacuation order 2 days ago. Water in the Lachlan River is expected to reach 10.8 meters in Forbes on Tuesday afternoon. Chinese consumer spending contracted in October and factory activity weakened in COVID-19 controls following a rise in infections weighing on the economy. Retail sales sank 0.5% with a year ago, down from September's 2.5% expansion, as millions of people were confined to their homes, government data showed. The performance was even weaker than expected by forecasters, who said activity would cool as Chinese pandemic controls and interest rate hikes by the U.S. Federal Reserve and other banks weigh on global activity. China's economic growth rebounded to 3.9% over a year earlier in the 3 months ending in September from the first half's 2.2%, but economists say activity already was cooling. More updates lined up on the other side, but before that, time to go for a short break. Now to sports. Novak Djokovic confirmed that he is negotiating with officials in Australia regarding his participation in the 2023 Australian Open. Djokovic is ranked just 8th in part because he missed two measures over his vaccination status, starting the year by being thrown out of Australia ahead of the Australian Open. In Turin, Djokovic is chasing a record equaling 6th title in the season-ending event previously known as the Masters Cup that brings together the season's top 8 FIDE players. The 2022 ATP Final 7 seed also say that the prospect of equaling Roger Federer's record of 6 ATP finals inspires him to play even more better tennis. About 1.2 million international visitors are expected to attend the World Cup in Qatar later this month. Football fans seeking peace and quiet away from the bustle and excitement of the World Cup in Qatar could enjoy a gentle paddle through the local mangrove forest. Takira holds 70% of the mangroves in Qatar. The roots pop out of the water in the straight line and slowly connect mangroves to each other, making it hard to remove from one from the others. With this update, we come to the end of this English News Bulletin, but before we say goodbye, let's have a quick reminder of the major stories. Poll campaigns intensifies with just 2 days remaining for canvassing 300,000 personnel to be deputed for security of polling centres. G20 summit opens in Bali with a plea for unity as Ukraine war tops agenda. Biden reiterates U.S. support for one China policy following his meeting with Xi. UN projects world's population will reach 8 billion. India to replace China as the world's most populous country next year. And Djokovic negotiating with Australian officials over his participation in the 2023 Australian Open. 21-time Grand Slam winner now chasing a 6th title at ATP Masters. That's all we have in this edition of English News Bulletin. We'll see you again with next round of English Bulletin at 6 in the evening. Till then, have a great time ahead and do stay tuned with us. Namaste.